A retired K-9 named Boomer barked wildly. Not at a criminal, not a weapon, but at a broken piggy bank in a little boy's hands. No one knew. He was saving the entire town. What was hidden inside those coins? And why did it make this old dog spring back into duty? You won't believe what they uncovered beneath the quiet streets of Stars Hollow. If you believe heroes come with paws and instincts sharper than any censor, hit subscribe, drop a comment. What would your dog do? And don't forget to share this with someone who still believes in small-town miracles. The autumn air in Stars Hollow had turned brisk, biting gently at the fingertips and nose tips of those wandering the leaf-scattered sidewalks. Nestled in the hills of Vermont, the town carried the scent of pine, chimney smoke, and distant apple pies cooling on windowsills. Main Street was quiet, lit by the fading glow of dusk and the occasional flicker of string lights still strung from the Fall Harvest Festival 2 weeks ago. It was the kind of town where people still waved to each other from porches, and the mailman knew every dog by name. On Chestnut Lane, a narrow street lined with sugar maples and picket fences, Sheriff Carter Bennett sat on the front steps of his two-story craftsman house. At 40, Carter carried the weariness of someone who had seen too much too early, but still held himself with the quiet dignity of a man rooted in purpose. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a face weathered not by age, but by memory, short-cropped dark blonde hair, streaked with early silver, and eyes the color of whetstone. He wore a flannel jacket, jeans, and boots that had outlasted 3 winters and 2 floods. Beside him, a boy no older than 7 darted barefoot across the porch. Oliver Bennett was small for his age, with pale freckled cheeks, messy brown hair that caught the last light of evening, and a wide-eyed curiosity that often overshadowed his timidity. He clutched something tightly in his arms, a bright green ceramic piggy bank with peeling paint and googly eyes glued crookedly on its snout. Behind them, sprawled half asleep by the welcome mat, lay Boomer. Boomer was a Belgian Malinois, nearly 9 years old, with a coat that once gleamed like burnished bronze, but now held streaks of gray along his muzzle and hind legs. His eyes, however, deep, intelligent amber, remained sharp. He had served for 6 years with the Vermont State K-9 unit, trained in explosive detection, patrol, and scent tracking. After an injury from shrapnel during a search operation 2 years ago, he'd been retired and adopted by Carter, his former partner. Since then, Boomer had grown accustomed to the slow pace of small-town living. Long naps, gentle walks, and the quiet companionship of a little boy who told him secrets no one else heard. Carter sipped his coffee as Oliver danced along the stone path leading to the sidewalk, humming softly, the piggy bank held like a treasure chest. "Don't drop it, kiddo," Carter called. "I won't," Oliver replied confidently. And then, ironically, the thing slipped. It happened quickly. A misstep on a wet leaf. A stumble. The unmistakable shatter of ceramic on concrete. The green pig exploded into shards, sending coins bouncing in all directions like tiny echoes of a bell long silenced. Oliver gasped and dropped to his knees, hands trembling as he tried to gather the pieces. And that's when Boomer barked. Not a groggy, half-hearted woof, but a full-throated, sharp bark that rang through the street like a fire alarm. He bolted up, ears flat, body rigid, eyes locked on the scattered coins. Then another bark, shorter, angrier. His hackles rose. He advanced 3 paces toward the broken piggy bank, nose twitching, low growl rumbling in his chest. Carter stood instantly, mug forgotten and already spilling coffee across the porch. Boomer. He had not heard that bark since Kandahar, since the last time Boomer found a tripwire bomb buried under loose gravel. It was not something Carter could ever mistake. Oliver looked up, confused and afraid. "Dad, is he mad at me?" "No, buddy," Carter said slowly, stepping forward and placing a calming hand on Boomer's shoulder. The dog did not relax. "He smells something." Carter knelt and gathered some of the coins. Dimes, nickels, a couple of quarters dulled with age. And one that wasn't like the others. It was a thick, foreign coin, round but with a jagged edge and a dull copper hue that shimmered oddly in the low light. A symbol like a triangle inside a circle, was stamped off center. Carter turned it over, then back again. It wasn't American. It wasn't anything he'd seen in circulation. He glanced at Boomer. The dog's nose hovered a few inches above the coin, but he didn't try to bite or paw. He simply growled, low and certain. "Where'd you get this, Ollie?" Carter asked, his voice a notch more serious. Oliver, still shaken, pointed to the piggy bank. "I don't know. It was in there. I've had it forever." Boomer let out another sharp bark, then sat back, ears still alert. Carter pocketed the strange coin and rubbed the dog's head. "Good boy," he muttered, though his brow stayed furrowed. "Real good boy." A car rolled slowly past, its headlights cutting across the yard. At the wheel was Sarah Tilden, a neighbor from 2 doors down. She was in her late 30s, tall and wiry, with prematurely white blonde hair pulled into a tight bun and a stern expression that rarely softened. A single mother of twin boys and a night shift nurse at the Stars Hollow General Clinic, Sarah was known for being practical, no-nonsense, and often aloof. She had been that way ever since her younger brother died from a fentanyl overdose 4 years earlier, an event that hardened her tone and narrowed her trust. She rolled down the window and peered at the scene. "Everything okay?" Carter nodded, standing. "Yeah, just a broken bank and a jumpy old dog." Sarah's eyes shifted to Boomer, who was now circling the edge of the driveway. "Didn't sound like just a jump." He barked like he meant it. Carter hesitated. "Maybe he did." She nodded once and drove on. Later that night, after Oliver was tucked into bed, his rebuilt piggy bank now taped and half empty, Carter sat in the garage with Boomer lying at his feet. The coin sat under a work light, still giving off that strange copper gleam. He had tried to find a match online. No luck. Boomer stirred but didn't bark again. He merely watched Carter, eyes sharp as razors, as if waiting for the man to see something he hadn't yet. Outside, the wind shifted. The maple branches creaked. And in the silence, Carter heard something in the distance, something almost imperceptible. The faint ticking of something buried, waiting. The sun had barely crested over the pine-covered hills surrounding Stars Hollow when Carter Bennett's radio crackled with the first strange call. The dispatcher's voice was soft with early morning fatigue, but beneath it lay a tension Carter didn't like. "Unit 1, we've got a possible break-in reported on Peachtree Drive. No sign of forced entry. Nothing obvious taken. Just weird." Carter rubbed a hand over his face and took a long sip of lukewarm coffee. He was already dressed in his duty khakis, badge clipped to his belt, service pistol snug in its holster. Boomer, tail twitching at his feet, had been pacing since dawn, unusual for a dog who now usually needed coaxing to rise. His nails clicked softly against the tile floor, circling, then stopping abruptly at the garage door. Another call came before Carter reached the patrol truck. Mrs. Lindholm's garden shed had been unlocked. Her watering can was gone, but the lock was still on the ground, intact. Over the next hour, 3 more reports trickled in. One from mechanic's shop, where someone had rifled through a tool chest but took only a rusted socket wrench. One from the old library, now mostly used as a community center, where nothing was stolen but a ventilation grate had been unscrewed. And one from Luther's Bait and Tackle, where the register was untouched, but 3 maps of the Greenridge Trail system had vanished. Carter's brow furrowed. Random objects, all seemingly worthless, all removed quietly. Boomer sat beside the cruiser's passenger door and gave a low chuff, his breath fogging in the morning chill. Carter opened the door without needing to ask. The dog leapt in with surprising grace. On the way to Peachtree Drive, Carter tapped the steering wheel absently. "What were we missing, Boomer?" The dog didn't answer, of course, but he stayed tense, staring out the window with alert posture, not the relaxed slump of a senior on his daily ride. Meanwhile, at Stars Hollow Elementary School, Oliver Bennett sat alone on the edge of the blacktop during morning recess. He clutched a lunchbox and tried to ignore the laughter drifting from the climbing frame. Across the yard, a trio of boys clustered together. One of them, Sammy Crowley, was waving something in the air, drawing mock applause from the other 2. "Look, it's Piggy the Exploder." Sammy laughed, holding up a cheap plastic toy pig. Sammy was tall for a 3rd grader, with a head of bright red curls and a confidence born from older brothers who taught him how to punch first and mock harder. He wasn't cruel exactly, just thoughtless, like a fire left unattended. Oliver didn't say anything. He just stood slowly, shoulders drawn in tight, and walked to the edge of the field, away from the noise. His cheeks burned, but he didn't cry. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a wrinkled Ziploc bag with the 3 coins he'd recovered since the piggy bank shattered. One of them, the one, felt heavier again today. The odd one. The triangle inside the circle shimmered faintly in the sunlight, and he thought, for a moment, that he heard a soft hum from it. But maybe that was just his heart. Back in town, Carter knocked gently on the door of the Lindholm residence. Margaret Lindholm, a widow in her 60s, greeted him in a pink bathrobe and curlers. She had round cheeks, sharp blue eyes, and a personality somewhere between a friendly librarian and an amateur interrogator. She ran the local knitting club and had an uncanny memory for town gossip. "I'm telling you, Sheriff, I locked that shed. I even double-checked because I had just oiled the hinges that morning. Can you show me exactly what was moved?" Margaret led him through a tidy backyard. Bird feeders hung like ornaments from low branches. Her garden beds were asleep for winter, but each one was marked with a small hand-painted stake. She pointed to the shed, its wooden door now slightly ajar, and inside, a neat row of tools. "My watering can's missing," she said. "The blue one, plastic, had a cracked spout." Carter frowned. "Nothing else. Not a thing. But the latch wasn't broken, just unhooked. Can I ask, Margaret, has anyone been poking around recently? Strangers? Delivery folks?" She shook her head. "No, but I did see something weird last night. Around 10:30, there was a flickering light in the woods, like someone with a headlamp walking the tree line." Carter's gaze shifted toward the trees. That patch of woods ran parallel to 3 of the other reported break-ins. He thanked her and moved back toward the cruiser. Boomer sat rigid in the front seat, nose pressed to the windshield, a low whine building in his throat. They headed to the trailhead where the Greenridge trail maps had disappeared. The parking lot was empty, gravel scattered like frostbite across the asphalt. Carter stepped out with Boomer at his side. The dog sniffed once, then twice, then pulled hard left toward the tree line. Half an hour later, Carter stood at the edge of a shallow hollow where the earth had been recently disturbed. He crouched and brushed away a few leaves. Buried beneath them was a rusted steel box, the kind used in electrical work. Inside, an old cell phone, 3 watch batteries, stripped copper wire, and the blue plastic watering can, its spout cut cleanly off. Carter's stomach dropped. Boomer growled softly behind him. Meanwhile, Oliver had decided he would find the rest of his coins. At home that afternoon, while Carter was still on patrol, Oliver slipped out the back door with Boomer trotting beside him. He retraced every step he'd taken before the piggy bank broke. Near the edge of their street, where a storm drain split the sidewalk, he saw a flash of dull silver. Another coin. Ordinary. But when he reached for it, Boomer barked again. This time not once, but 3 times, and then stood between Oliver and the drain, tail rigid. From beneath the grating, something glinted, and it wasn't a coin. The fog clung thick over Stars Hollow that morning, rolling low across rooftops like breath from something ancient and watching. The streets were quiet, quieter than they should have been for a Thursday, and Carter Bennett felt the stillness in his bones as he stood on the porch, coffee cooling rapidly in his hand. He hadn't slept much. The hollow where he'd found the steel box the day before still pressed on his mind. He hadn't filed it in the official report yet. Something about it didn't sit right. Boomer lay on the porch beside him, stiff and alert, one paw twitching slightly with a tension that never fully faded now. The dog's gaze was fixed not on the trees or street, but downward, toward the soil beneath the porch slats. The radio crackled softly on the table beside Carter. A new voice this time. Low, distorted. "You're looking in the wrong places, Sheriff. The threat isn't what's been taken. It's what's been left behind." Then silence. Carter froze. The call hadn't come from dispatch. There was no ping, no digital signature, no call Idaho. Just static, then nothing. He reached slowly for the mic, but hesitated before speaking. Inside the house, Oliver stood at the dining table, frowning over his scattered coins. 7 were normal, worn dimes, smudged nickels. But the eighth, the strange one with the triangle and circle insignia, felt different again this morning. Not heavier, but warmer. He could swear it gave a slight pulse in his palm, almost like a heartbeat. Boomer had growled at it the night before and refused to stay in the same room once it was on the table. But Oliver couldn't let it go. He slipped it in his coat pocket, then reached for his backpack. If his dad found out he was sneaking out again to look for coins, he'd be grounded till Christmas, but the nagging feeling in his chest wouldn't let him stop. Something wanted to be found. He whistled softly for Boomer, but the dog didn't move. His eyes flicked toward the floorboards. At school, Oliver kept to himself. During lunch, he wandered the edge of the soccer field near the equipment shed, pretending to tie his shoes while glancing along the fence line. That's when he saw it. Another coin, half buried in the dirt. He scooped it up quickly before anyone noticed. Treasure hunting again, a voice said behind him. Oliver turned to see a girl about his age. She had jet black hair tucked into a red wool cap and wore a heavy corduroy jacket patched at the elbows. Her eyes were a sharp shade of gray-green and filled with curiosity. She offered a half-smile. "I'm June," she added. "New. My family just moved here from Pittsburgh." Oliver hesitated but nodded. "I am Oliver." "What's that?" she asked, eyeing the coin now hidden in his hand. He paused. "A clue." June grinned. "Cool. I like clues." Meanwhile, Carter sat in his office at the station, staring at the silent radio on his desk. He'd already had it checked. No transmission logs, no record of incoming calls. The voice was gone. The words still lingered. "The threat isn't what's been taken. It's what's been left behind." He pulled open a file marked Unusual Activity, Stars Hollow, and began flipping through photos of the items taken in the recent break-ins. The socket wrench, the plastic watering can, the stripped wire, maps, all basic materials, all components of something. He scribbled a note. What are they building? His thoughts were interrupted when Deputy Marcus Keene entered. Marcus was 31, stocky with a broad chest and a perpetually furrowed brow. He had grown up in Stars Hollow, joined the Army at 19, and came home 5 years ago quieter than he left. Loyal, grounded, and known to keep a small notebook in his vest where he jotted things most cops overlooked. Marcus tapped the file. "I don't think it's random," he said without preamble. "I found something." Carter leaned in. At the old railway access tunnel behind Greystone Bridge. Used to be sealed. Someone's been cutting the chain. Inside, there's fresh footprints. Large. Possibly boots. Multiple trips. And tire tracks, like a wagon or small cart. Dragging what? Carter asked. "No idea yet, but I planted a trail cam near the entrance." Carter nodded, a chill running down his spine. "Keep that quiet. For now." That night, after homework, Oliver took June into the woods behind his house. She didn't question him much, just followed, sharp-eyed and quiet. When they reached the shallow creek where the first strange coin had landed after the piggy bank broke, Boomer stopped dead ahead of them and growled again. His ears pinned, his body low. "What's wrong with your dog?" June whispered. "He's not wrong," Oliver said. Boomer moved to a specific spot and began pawing softly at the ground. The kids helped him. Beneath a layer of wet leaves and moss, they uncovered something smooth and flat. A metal panel, buried just beneath the surface. June reached down. "It's a hatch." Carter's radio crackled again that night. This time from his cruiser while he was parked outside the town's closed-up train station. The voice was the same. "You're too late, Sheriff. The door's already open." The line went dead. The late afternoon sun dipped behind the tree line, casting long golden shadows across the forest floor. The air was still, thick with the scent of damp leaves and distant smoke curling from unseen chimneys. Boomer led the way through the underbrush, his movements tense and precise, ears alert and tail stiff. Every few steps, he would pause, sniff the air, and then press on with a determination Carter hadn't seen in him since their last tour together. Behind Carter, Oliver and June followed in silence. Oliver had a flashlight clutched tightly in one hand, the strange coin in his jacket pocket pressing like a secret against his chest. June, hands tucked into her coat, scanned their surroundings with quick, calculating eyes. Despite only knowing her a few days, She moved with a self-assuredness that made Carter glance back at her twice. She reminded him of someone. The trees thinned near the edge of Hollow Ridge, where old railroad posts leaned like forgotten sentinels. Nestled in a clearing stood an abandoned house, its once white siding now grayed and streaked with moss, windows boarded or shattered, the porch caved in under the weight of years. It was a place locals avoided, murmuring stories of ghosts and accidents. Carter knew it well. He'd played there as a child, before his mother forbade it. Boomer stopped at the rotted steps and let out a short, sharp bark. Carter stepped forward, his hand resting on the grip of his sidearm. He gestured for the kids to stay back. The floorboards groaned under his weight as he pushed the door open, revealing an interior cloaked in dust and silence. The air was stale with mildew and the faint tang of rusted metal. Light filtered through broken blinds, casting narrow slashes across warped floorboards. Carter's flashlight swept across the room. The furniture was gone, but faint outlines on the floor suggested where a couch and chair once sat. A table stood in the center, and beside it, fresh footprints. Multiple sizes. Recent. Boomer followed close, nose low. Then he stopped near a panel in the floor, half covered by a threadbare rug. He growled again. Carter pulled the rug aside and found a latch. It creaked as he lifted it, revealing wooden steps descending into shadow. "Stay here," Carter warned the kids. "No exceptions." "I can help," June said. "I'm good at patterns." Her tone was flat, matter of fact, not pleading. Carter looked her over. She was slight, shoulders narrow, knees scuffed from tree, climbing, or schoolyard tumbles. But her gaze held a calmness that reminded him of trauma, of someone who'd had to grow up too quickly. He relented with a nod. "Stay close." The basement was colder. The air was denser, buzzing faintly with the smell of oil, copper, and something acrid beneath it all. The beam of Carter's flashlight fell across a work table littered with wires, timers, nails, batteries, materials pulled from the recent thefts. Nearby, a corkboard was pinned with blueprints, newspaper clippings, and several trail maps with red marker lines drawn to converge on one central point, Stars Hollow Fairgrounds. Pushed to the edge of the table was a sketch, a makeshift device, small enough to fit into a backpack, with placement notes scribbled in jagged handwriting. Oliver's voice was barely a whisper. "That's during the fall festival." Carter picked up one of the clippings. It was a feature article from 5 years ago. The subject, a local man named Edwin Mallory. Carter froze. Edwin Mallory had grown up in Stars Hollow, an odd, reclusive boy with a fascination for radio signals and mechanical puzzles. He'd lived with his grandmother until her death, and afterwards slipped through the cracks, eventually disappearing from public life. Rumors swirled, of course, that he'd been bullied, that he'd once tried to set fire to the old school bus, that no one ever checked on him. He'd been forgotten. Until now. "Who's Edwin?" June asked, scanning the name. "Someone this town didn't want to see," Carter replied. They searched the rest of the basement. In a crate near the wall, beneath folded tarps and old army jackets, Carter found a box containing several of the same triangle inside circle coins. Dozens of them. He picked one up. It was identical to Oliver's. Boomer snarled low and backed away. Each coin had been hollowed out, filled with a sliver of something metallic. Faint pulses of heat emanated from them. June leaned over. "They're not just coins. They're triggers." Carter stared. "What?" "They're using them to arm something remotely. All of them must be scattered already. Probably hidden inside town decorations or trash bins. Maybe even given to kids." Oliver's face turned pale. Carter turned on his radio. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Bennett. Code Red. We have a credible explosive threat against the fall festival. I need EOD, hazmat, and state police backup on site within the hour." Boomer barked once, sharp, commanding. Then a sound from upstairs. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Carter raised his pistol and stepped lightly back up the stairs, signaling for the kids to retreat into the shadows. As he reached the top, the door creaked inward. A man stood there, late 40s, thin, with greasy brown hair hanging around sunken cheeks. He wore a faded green army coat, the sleeves too long, and heavy boots caked in mud. His eyes were pale gray, almost translucent and utterly emotionless. Edwin Mallory. He tilted his head. You weren't supposed to find this place yet, he said softly. Boomer lunged forward from the shadows, standing between Carter and Edwin, growling, teeth bared. Carter didn't lower his weapon. It's over, Edwin. You're not hurting anyone. Edwin blinked slowly, as if the concept didn't register. Then he smiled, small and strange. You still think this town deserves to be saved? Behind him, from the woods, the low hum of something mechanical whirred to life. Carter knew, with sudden clarity, this was only the beginning. The morning before the fall festival arrived with skies the color of pale ash and a hush that didn't belong to celebrations. Stars Hollow, usually bustling with ladders, hay bales, and clinking cider mugs by this hour, seemed oddly subdued. Paper decorations hung motionless in store windows, and the town square sat quiet under its canopy of amber and crimson leaves. Sheriff Carter Bennett stood in the town hall conference room, a large map of Stars Hollow spread across the table before him. His jaw was tight, the lines around his eyes deeper than the night before. He hadn't slept. All night, he'd been reviewing every camera feed, every map, every stolen item. But Edwin Mallory had disappeared into the forest like mist. Deputy Marcus Keene stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes heavy but focused. Next to him was Officer Lynn Garrett, a new recruit, tall and lean with tightly braided blonde hair, a square jaw, and a quiet, serious air. Lynn had moved to Stars Hollow from upstate New York after a family tragedy. A drunk driving accident had taken her younger brother. She was sharp, meticulous, and had a reputation for noticing what others missed. We've swept the perimeter of the fairgrounds, Lynn said, pointing to the map. No signs of buried devices, but that doesn't rule out remote triggers. The county bomb squad is en route, ETA 1 hour. Carter nodded, but didn't look up. His mind was on the coins, on the children, on Oliver. Oliver Bennett sat in the back row of his classroom, but his mind was miles away. The room was bright, filled with posters about pumpkins, poems on leaves, and a giant countdown to the fall festival written in orange marker on the board. But Oliver couldn't focus. His hand kept drifting to his pocket, with a strange coin pulsed faintly like a second heartbeat. Boomer had paced by the front door all morning, clearly agitated. When Oliver had kissed his dad goodbye before school, Boomer had whined low, then pressed his nose against Oliver's hand and wouldn't let go until he promised to be careful. That promise now echoed uncomfortably in Oliver's mind. At recess, while the other kids played on the swings or ran through leaf piles, Oliver slipped away with Boomer's training leash coiled to his backpack. He'd seen something on the way to school, a rust-colored trail of what looked like red clay, barely noticeable, leading away from the sidewalk and behind the school gym. He followed it now, heart pounding, until it led him to a place no student ever went without permission, the old equipment shed behind the track field. It was weather-beaten, with warped siding and windows so dirty they looked painted over. The door hung crooked on its hinge. Boomer's instincts had been right before. Oliver pushed open the door. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of oil and dust. A tarp covered something bulky in the corner. Tools hung along the wall, some of them glowing faintly with a strange, bluish light. And at the center of the room, carefully arranged on a metal table, were more coins, dozens of them. But these were different. They pulsed like they were alive. Footsteps echoed behind him. Oliver turned, and there stood Edwin Mallory. His lank frame cast a long shadow across the floor. His coat flapped slightly with the breeze coming from the broken window. His pale gray eyes studied Oliver with something between interest and indifference. "You're early," Edwin said calmly. Oliver's voice caught in his throat. What is this?" Edwin stepped closer, eyes never leaving the boy's face. "It's justice." For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of something electronic, steady, patient. "You know what they used to call me?" Edwin asked, his voice soft, almost tender. "Mallory the Mole. Because I liked radios. Machines. Because I didn't talk like they wanted. Because I saw things differently. And no one did a damn thing when they locked me in the supply closet every lunch break." He stepped closer. "No one until now." Oliver backed toward the door, but Edwin raised one hand, not threatening but firm. I'm not going to hurt you, Oliver. Not if you understand. Not if you see why this has to happen. But the town, Oliver started, voice shaking. The town forgot me. Now, it will remember. Suddenly, the door behind Oliver slammed shut with a clang. Edwin walked past him and latched it from the inside. Oliver's chest tightened. He was trapped. Back at town hall, Carter's phone buzzed. A new alert. The trail cam Marcus had placed days ago behind the school had triggered. Carter opened the footage. A short clip showed Oliver slipping behind the gym, alone. Boomer, who had been lying silently by the table, sat up with a jolt. Then he barked, once loud and sharp. Carter stared at the footage again. He's gone after Edwin. Marcus didn't hesitate. We'll take the cruiser. Boomer was already at the door. Inside the shed, Oliver edged toward the tarp. He yanked it aside and gasped. Beneath it sat a large metal frame lined with tiny coin-sized sockets, each connected to a wire. At the center, a small screen flashed a timer. 47 minutes. He turned to Edwin. You're going to blow up the festival. Edwin's expression didn't change. Not all of it, just enough to wake them up. Oliver shook his head. You don't have to do this. I already did, Edwin whispered. A loud bang echoed outside, the sound of tires skidding to a stop. Carter's voice called out, Oliver. Boomer barked from outside, furious. Edwin stepped between Oliver and the door. I won't let you ruin it. But Oliver, heart pounding, did the only thing he could think of. He reached into his pocket and tossed the coin at the device. It landed with a sharp metallic chime. The lights in the machine flickered. Boomer slammed into the door. The latch cracked. Then it gave. Carter rushed in, weapon raised. Marcus behind him. Edwin froze. Boomer growled low. Oliver turned, pale but standing. He was going to destroy everything. Carter stepped forward, hand on Oliver's shoulder. Not today. Behind them, the device began to spark. Everyone out now. They fled into the daylight just as a surge of smoke burst from a shed. No explosion, just a hiss of scorched circuits. The coin had shorted the machine. Boomer barked once, and Oliver smiled through tears. Night had fallen over Stars Hollow like a velvet curtain, draped in gold from the lingering lights of the fall festival. The town square glowed with strings of lanterns and paper leaves, children darting between booths, and music floating in the air like wood smoke. The air was crisp, and every breath carried the scent of pumpkin bread, cider, and pine needles freshly crushed underfoot. But it wasn't just the festival that had lit up the town. It was something deeper, something that had shifted beneath the skin of the community. Earlier that day, disaster had been a breath away. Now, people smiled more slowly, looked one another in the eye a little longer, as if aware of how close they'd come to losing something precious. Sheriff Carter Bennett stood near the gazebo, sipping cider from a tin cup, one hand resting on Boomer's back. The Belgian Malinois sat proudly at his side, ears up, eyes always scanning, tail thumping once when Carter scratched behind his ear. He wore a new harness now, blue nylon with a silver patch stitched across the front that read, K9 Hero. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. Carter's other hand held a folded report. The device had been neutralized. Edwin Mallory was in custody. The state police had taken over the forensic analysis of the coins, confirming that each hollow token carried a synthetic compound capable of triggering an incendiary reaction when exposed to wireless frequency. If not for Oliver's coin, the outlier, the entire system might have detonated. Looks like we owe your kid more than just a medal, said Deputy Marcus Keene, stepping up beside Carter with a paper plate in hand. He offered half a cinnamon donut to Boomer, who accepted it with the grace of a retired king. He's not just brave. He's smart. He read that room better than most adults would have. Carter nodded, scanning the crowd. He didn't do it alone. That girl, June, she's sharp, observant. Reminds me of someone he used to know. She around? Marcus asked. Somewhere. She said her mom wanted to come tonight. At that, Carter spotted her, June weaving between hay bales near the apple dunk tank, talking to a tall woman with auburn curls and a green flannel coat. The woman had strong cheekbones and a bookish posture, the kind that suggested years behind a desk, but eyes too restless to stay put. She had a gentle smile and a protective arm always nearby, even if her daughter moved like she didn't need guarding. Carter turned back toward the center of the square. On stage, Mayor Helen Arlo was adjusting a microphone. Helen was in her late 60s, petite with silver hair swept up into a bun, wearing her trademark cranberry-colored coat. She had served as mayor for nearly 2 decades, and though her voice had softened in recent years, her eyes still held the command of someone who never let the town forget its promises. She cleared her throat. "Before we light the lanterns," she began, "I have something important to say." The crowd quieted. Stars Hollow is a town built on tradition, on trust, on the idea that we take care of one another, not just when things are easy, but when they're terrifying. Yesterday, we faced something we never expected, a plan born from pain, aimed at breaking us apart. But we're still here, and we're standing here tonight because of courage, because of one boy and one dog. A cheer broke out before she could finish. Oliver, seated on the edge of the stage beside Boomer, turned red and grinned wide as Boomer gave a soft bark, almost like a bow. "Oliver Bennett," Mayor Arlo continued, "for your bravery, your determination, and your heart, we award you the Stars Hollow Medal of Civic Honor. And to Boomer, our town's 4-legged guardian, we give our gratitude, a new badge, and unlimited bacon at next month's pancake breakfast." Laughter rang out as Carter led Boomer onto the stage. The dog sat straight, ears proud. Oliver hugged him tightly as the medal was slipped over his neck, and Boomer leaned gently into him in return. As the lanterns were lit, hundreds of them, floating gently into the crisp autumn sky, Carter stood quietly at the edge of the platform. He watched the faces of neighbors he'd known for decades, now looking at one another with new respect. He spotted Sarah Tilden in the crowd, still tall, still composed, but this time holding a hot cider and laughing with someone from the bakery. Her grief-worn armor seemed lighter tonight. Carter remembered Edwin Mallory's words. "You still think this town deserves to be saved." He looked again at the glowing sky, the families holding hands, the way Oliver clutched June's sleeve as they stared upward. "Yes," Carter whispered, "I do." Later that night, after the crowd had thinned and the booths closed, Carter and Oliver walked home under a sky scattered with stars. Boomer walked beside them, tail brushing the fallen leaves, occasionally looking up as if still tracking something unseen. "Dad," Oliver asked, voice soft. "Yeah. Do you think Edwin was always like that? Angry?" Carter thought a moment. "No, I think he got lost. Lost like in the woods. No, lost like when no one notices you're hurting. When nobody asks what you need." Oliver was quiet for a while. "We should notice more people." Carter smiled. "Yeah, we should." As they stepped onto their front porch, Boomer stopped suddenly and looked up. In the yard, a girl had left something, a small box wrapped in newspaper and twine. Oliver opened it. Inside was a single coin, identical in shape to the dangerous ones, but now hollowed and smooth. Polished. Safe. On it, a tiny engraving, found. Not forgotten. There was no note, just a bark, and the stars above, watching. Sometimes, the ones who save us don't wear uniforms or speak loudly. They have fur, quiet eyes, and an unshakable instinct for what's right. And sometimes, the smallest hands can carry the greatest courage. The bark beneath the stars reminds us that heroes come in all shapes, and that true strength is born from compassion, not fear. In everyday life, we often walk past people carrying silent struggles, much like Edwin once did. Maybe today is the day to notice, to ask, to listen. A small act of kindness, a shared lunch, a kind word, or even a simple smile could be the thread that keeps someone from unraveling. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes in good. Drop a comment below. What did you take from this tale? Type "Amen" in the comments if you believe that God still sends angels with 4 legs and honest hearts. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and help this message reach someone who needs to hear it. May God bless you and the quiet protectors in your life.